Let's change focus now to the Middle East, where top Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran this week, just hours after the top Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukra was also killed. Now, these killings are threatening to escalate what is obviously clearly a volatile situation in the Middle East between Israel, Hamas and Lebanon. For more, we're joined by Professor Greg Barton from Deakin University. Great to see you again, Greg. Let's start with the Hamas leader, initially thought to have been killed by an airstrike, but we now find out it was actually a hidden bomb planted in his accommodation in Tehran 2 months ago. That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. It's not surprising for those who follow things that Israel can operate deep in territories like Iran and the capital Tehran. But it's still remarkable that the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the heart of the regime, in their own secure guest house where their VVIPs stay, allowed not only a bomb to be planted, but remain undetected for possibly a couple of months. That's remarkable.
Well, it's going to be one hell of a witch hunt, isn't there, Greg, inside Iran to find out how the hell that happened?
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Steve. I mean, one reaction here is, Iran wants to save face, the regime wants to save face, but I think that'll begin at the very least with purging whoever they claim is responsible. Pity those who end up in the line of fire of that inquiry, even if it's not a place where you see transparent justice done. So they'll be trying to save face. They then have to, of course, think about how they respond externally, which is trickier.
So what is our understanding of what the Iranians might do? They have vowed to hit back. Netanyahu said he's ready for whatever might come. What capacity does Iran have to attack Israel, and how might that manifest itself, do you think?
Yeah, that is the big question, Steve. Iran has considerable capacity in terms of rockets and drones. Mind you, earlier this year, back in April, it launched a barrage, admittedly with fair warning, and Israel was able to shoot down pretty much all of them, then responded itself in a very symbolic way. We hope that's the sort of symbolic level of response this time around, because we do know that Iran and Israel have this in common: they don't want a full-scale war. At least the two countries, the two regimes don't. Netanyahu may be tempted to try and get up to the limit with a conflict because it may advantage him politically, but it's not in Israel's interest, not in Tehran's interest. One option for them is to go through proxies. The Houthis are their proxy. Not completely beholden to them, but certainly only able to do what they do because of Iranian support, and very active in the Red Sea, as we know. What hasn't been activated so far in terms of proxy responses is Hezbollah. There's been symbolic exchanges. Given, as you said, the military head of Hezbollah was taken out in what appears to be an Israeli airstrike, it would sort of make sense for Iran to say to Hezbollah, okay, now you've got to lift the game. That sort of takes the risk off Tehran's regime directly, and everyone involved assumes they can avoid an all-out war. But of course, that's where the risk lies.
Israel hasn't claimed responsibility for the Tehran assassination. Why not? They're normally pretty keen to put their hand up when they take out a leader of that seniority.
Well, Israel certainly has a track record of taking out Hamas leaders, amongst others, and for some hits, they're very happy to claim it. For others, plausible deniability works to their advantage, because as long as you can't sort of prove who did it, it makes a different calculus in terms of how you respond. Times of Israel is reporting on this, and including the details we just discussed. I don't think anyone expects in Israel or outside that it wasn't the Israelis, but it's plausible that this was in fact a hit by the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps against somebody who was ostensibly their friend and ally, but for whom there may be personal grievance. So, plausible deniability has its own advantage. It sort of lowers the stakes to some extent.
So what do you really think might happen next? I've spoken to you 4 or 5 times in the last 6 months, and we talk about an expansion of the conflict. Well, the conflict really has expanded, hasn't it? You've got the front with Hezbollah in Lebanon. You've got obviously what's still going on in Gaza. You've got the Houthi rebels, as you said, in the Red Sea. How much worse could it get?
Oh, we could have a regional war, Steve. With nuclear-powered states involved, or nuclear weapon states, and certainly with states like Iran who want to be a nuclear state, but certainly have the ability to launch very devastating long-range, fairly accurate missiles. So it could get incredibly much worse. At this stage, remain cautiously optimistic. I hope we're back where we were back in April and that a symbolic exchange is enough. The biggest problem for the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps regime in Tehran is embarrassment. I don't know that they are going to be devastated by the loss of Ismail Haniyeh. You know, there's complex issues there, but the embarrassment of it being done in their territory, that's something they're going to want to try and save face on. They certainly don't want an all-out war. Neither does Israel. I mean, Netanyahu, as I said, would like to toy with it for political reasons, but he doesn't want to get caught up on either.
We saw today that report by Mark Binskin into the drone strike that killed the Australian aid worker Zomi Frankum in Gaza, confirmed that the incident was, quote, a grave mistake. The IDF's own report concluded the same. What impact is this likely to have on Australia's relationship with Israel? I watched Penny Wong today very carefully. I still get a sense that, you know, Penny Wong is very much of the view that the Gazan conflict should stop immediately, regardless. She says she wants the hostages back, but seems to be sitting there with, you know, making arguments from both sides of the fence. What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, look, Steve, I mean, this sort of price was factored in long ago. So the announcement today is significant, but there's a couple of things here. You know, one is that I think, you know, Penny Wong's not all alone in wanting the conflict in Gaza to cease. Most people who look with concern at what could happen with Hezbollah and Lebanon think that cutting the Gaza conflict, getting some sort of ceasefire, is a way to flick a circuit breaker on that. I know that it's a more complex relationship, but people who say that, including the foreign minister herself, are not saying that Israel shouldn't deal with Hamas and neutralize the threat posed by Hamas, nor are they saying that Hamas should be allowed to remain in the Gaza Strip. The trouble is, and this goes back to what the IDF is admitting, this war has been dreadful for them. They're suffering trauma from the horrible Hamas terrorist attack of October 7th, but also discipline with soldiers and the way things are being played out on the ground in Gaza, which is partly the fault of political leadership, but also partly the fault of IDF itself, is not going well. They've diminished Hamas's ability to fire rockets. They've, you know, certainly killed a lot of Hamas fighters, but Hamas is by no means out of the game. You know, in particular, Yahya Sinwar, the military leader in Gaza, is still presumably in an underground tunnel somewhere. If they could kill him, that would give them a grounds for saying, we've, you know, mission accomplished. Perhaps that's the reason for going after an easy target like Ismail Haniyeh. But the reality is the war in Gaza hasn't gone well for the IDF. Of course, it's been a terrible human tragedy for everyone, particularly the people of Gaza. But this means that the IDF is not in a position where it can be confident about dealing with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It's really in a terrible state. It's also fatigued. I mean, people have been spending long tours of duty. There's been a lot of IDF fighters and others killed or wounded. It's a tough time, and the political situation makes everyone anxious and concerned. So, to say that there should be some way of finding a ceasefire is not to say that this problem is solved or that it shouldn't continue to be dealt with. But, you know, the current situation isn't working very well. And that's one reason for cautious optimism, by the way, about the hope that things don't escalate with Hezbollah. Because when you do the calculations, as surely the leaders of IDF and the intelligence agencies do, they know that this could end pretty horribly. It went badly wrong in 1982 when they laid siege to Beirut, and that gave rise to Hezbollah. They were fighting PLO at the time. It ended badly when they tried to defeat Hezbollah in 2006 in southern Lebanon, only for Hezbollah to survive and today to be much stronger than it was in 2006 because of Iranian support. So they understand full well that there's just no easy answers here.